guys, welcome back to A Page in the Chapter, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Paige and today we are talking about all of the books I read in February. Boy, was February a big reading month. I kind of thought January was a bit of a fluke with the amount that I read, and then February came along and I read more than that. I read more in February than I did in January, when February was a shorter month. Honestly, like, my average at the minute is 3 to 4 books a week, which is just insane. People keep asking me how I'm doing it. I don't know. I don't know. Something's just happened lately where I found myself being able to read this much, and I don't quite know how I'm doing it, and also working full time. So please don't ask me for any tips because I don't have them. So I read 13 books in the month of February. I'm very impressed with myself for doing that. And yeah, I'm going to talk about them. I would suggest grabbing a hot drink, a cozy, nice drink to keep you company. I feel like we might be here a while. I feel like this could be a long video just because of the sheer amount of books I have to talk about. My drink of choice today is chai latte. Yeah, I'm basically going to talk you through all of the books that I read in the month of February, ratings, thoughts, feelings, what I recommend. I like doing these videos because I think it's fun to have a record of how much I read in each month, but I have not done one of these for January. This is the first wrap up of the year and it's a hefty one. So if you guys like the sound of this video and you like reading wrap-ups, then do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. I do plan on doing one of these every month for the rest of the year. I just missed January because things were a little bit hectic and it didn't quite fit into the schedule of videos and the backlog of videos that I already had ready to go when I returned to BookTube. But I do plan going forward to have I wrap up every single month, so there will be no shortage. Also, do please feel free to check me out on Bookstagram at Page and Chapter, because I'll put up my reviews or what books I'm reading as we go. So if you really just don't want to wait monthly, Bookstagram is probably going to be the best place to see what I'm reading and get recommendations about the romance books that I'm reading if you realise that we have a similar taste in books. So because I think this could be a hefty video, let's just get on right now into these books and let's discuss the 13 books that I read in the month of February. So we started out the month in an interesting way. The first book that I read in February was Iced Out by Veronica Eden. I read this for a Kindle Unlimited sports romances vlog that I was doing, which I will link for you guys because it's going to be the first 3 books that we talk about. I gave Iced Out by Veronica Eden 1 star. And it takes a lot for me to give a book 1 star. For me to give a book 1 star, I have to genuinely have not found a single thing that I like about it, and there can't be anything that I would feel like somebody else might like. I try to find a balance when I'm rating books between what I enjoyed and like objectively speaking, or like for the masses type of thing. So for me to give a book 1 star, it has to be I didn't find anything I like about it, and I don't think anybody else would find anything they like about it either. So this is a college ice hockey romance, and it's like a biggest rival's little sister kind of romance. We follow our main character Easton, and he plays for this hockey team, and his biggest rival's little sister is who he has this relationship with. And yeah, this is really sold as like a rivals thing. That's like the biggest thing that it talks about, that is supposed to be what draws these characters together, and I was very excited about that. I thought that could add a really interesting dynamic to a hockey romance. I was really interested to see how that played out, only for that to not have a role in the story at all. You could have removed that element and the book could have happened exactly the same way, and I hate when tropes are thrown in just for the sake of saying you have a trope in there. Like, if I can take out the trope and the book can still happen exactly the same way, then I'm really annoyed that it was put in the first place, just for the sake of getting like KU clicks, because you can put it in your tagline that it's that trope. Like, they went to the same uni, so they could have still met at the same bar. She could have still been dancing on a bar top and he would have still been just as interested in her. All of that could have happened if he also didn't know that she was his rival's little sister, because it's made abundantly clear how drawn to her he is from the beginning, and it's not just because like related to his rival in some way. So, you know, you can't have it both ways. You can't have it as, you know, he was instantly really attracted to her, really interested in her, wanting to pursue her from the beginning, and also have that trope. Like, I feel like there has to be an element of tension added by the fact that the rival is an element, and then for the brother to not even care when it actually did all come out that they were dating, and he was kind of just, you know, like, he just didn't care. He was like, yeah, I trust my sister, I trust my sister's thoughts. Like, why have that be a part of the book? Like, you didn't use it to cause any tension, you didn't use it to cause any plot or like conflict between our characters, so there was no point in being there. This is also the first in a series, so we were introduced to a whole host of hockey guys and characters that I think we were kind of supposed to want to see their romances play out in future books, but there was way too many characters and all of them ended up just being like a shell of a character. They were all so like two-dimensional and flat. There was nothing about them that made me think, yeah, I really want to see how your story plays out, what kind of person you are, and I'm really intrigued to read more about you. There was none of that in this book at all. I really struggled to find anything that I liked about this book, and it was not the start to the month that I was hoping for. So yeah, unfortunately, wasn't a fan of Iced Out. The next book that I read for this video was Coach by Devney Perry. This is a football romance, but this one is a little bit interesting in that it's a little bit friends to lovers and a little bit second chance. The prologue follows our main characters as they are at university. Our male main character is like the star of the football team, and they are best friends. They spend a lot of time together and we can really see that they are supposed to be in love. And just as they're about to kind of take that step forward in their relationship, our male main character finds out that his ex-girlfriend is pregnant with his baby, and so he decides to marry his ex-girlfriend and, you know, step up and be a dad kind of thing, and these two kind of lose their opportunity. And then we, for the main majority of this book, fast forward to the present day where we follow our male main character after his marriage has broken down and he is taking his daughter back to where this college is because he is going to coach this football team, and we follow him as he and our previous main character, who also works at this university, kind of get their second chance. This was, it was okay. I gave this 3 stars. I would recommend it, but I don't feel any particular like obsession with this book. I wasn't in love with it. I thought it was, you know, okay. I really liked the second chance element to this, but I thought the villain of this story, the kind of ex-wife, was again incredibly two-dimensional. She had nothing about her other than the fact that she was this villainous character, and she was just portrayed as truly horrible, and I didn't find that to be particularly realistic. But I did enjoy the second chance element, as I've said. I did enjoy kind of seeing these two characters. Again, like, I just felt very okay about this book. I think if you want to read a football romance that's kind of got like a second chance element, also has a single dad trope, then like this is, it's fine. And then I read what I thought was going to be my favourite book of that video, which is Offside by Avery Keelan, and then I ended up giving that one 2 stars. So this follows our main character Bailey, and her brother and her boyfriend play for a hockey team at a university, and then her boyfriend dumps her on her 21st birthday and kind of immediately starts dating someone else, and it becomes a very awkward and difficult situation for her because her whole life is with this team or her friends she has through him. It becomes very difficult, so she ends up spending a lot of time and kind of almost fake dating. It's not a fake, I wouldn't say it's a fake dating trope, but there's a little bit of element of like, we'll hang out, and if people want to believe that we're dating, then that's fine. And she ends up doing that with the captain of the rival team that her ex and her brother play for. The rival element in this actually slacked, okay? I finally read a book where it had teammates rival and it slapped. It was so good. It was a huge part of this book. It really paid off well. What I didn't like about this book and why I gave it 2 stars was at around the 60% mark, it became a little bit ludicrous. I didn't think that the direction the book took really fit with a college sports book. It felt like kind of crazy in the way that like billionaire romances or like mafia romances can get kind of crazy, and you have suspension of disbelief there because you're like, okay, these people have a lot of money, that could happen. It felt a little bit strange to have that in a hockey romance. It felt like the author didn't quite know what story she was telling or where she wanted it to fit in this romance market, and to me it completely ruined all enjoyment that I had of this book. On a personal note, I personally did not like the direction that the book took, and then just objectively as well, it didn't feel like it fit. It didn't feel like it worked. So I ended up giving this book 2 stars as a result of that, and it really let me down. And then Coach ended up being my favorite book of that video, even though I found that one to be didn't love it, didn't hate it. So it wasn't, I didn't get the most lucky with the sports romances that I picked for that video. But then the next book that I picked up was The Crown of Gilded Bones by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is from Blood and Ash book 3, and I gave this book 5 stars, and I would highly recommend this one, and I don't understand the hate that this series gets, or this book in particular gets. I've seen a number of people saying that they would DNF the series after this 3rd book. I could never. I thought this was the best one yet. So I feel like in every single video I've had recently, I've explained what From Blood and Ash is about. It is basically a romantasy where we follow kind of the mythical creatures of vampires, but then also vampires with a twist and an original kind of element to it. And it's a very spicy, fun romantasy. I really don't want to describe the whole thing again. I have so many videos where I've talked about this. If you are really that interested in what From Blood and Ash is about, my romantasy video will explain it and also give you some similar recommendations to this. But yeah, I gave this 5 stars. I read it. I managed to read this big chunk of a book in 3 days. I could not put it down. I felt like the fantasy element in this really stepped up, and there were plot twists in this that had me pacing around my living room. Jack was just trying to game, and he was like, well, what's going on? And I was in the corner like shaking and squealing over the plot twists that were happening in this book, and I loved it so much. I will say this one is probably heavier on the world building and the kind of magic system building, and just general fantasy elements are stronger in this book than they probably have been in the others, which have been more on the romance side. But considering it's a 6-book series, I feel like this 3rd book really did need to take a step back and like add a foundation for this to be propelled for the next 3 books. And I am very excited to see where this series takes me in the future. I'm sure there will be more like screaming, crying, throwing up moments. I'm sure I will spend a lot of time pacing around my living room or crouched to the floor in the corner trying to regulate my body after the plot twists that are happening, and I love that. Okay, that's such a fun way to experience a book, and I am not sorry about it. I'm now into like a little string of good books, because the next book that I read was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber, and I gave this 4 stars. So this is a young adult kind of fantasy with a strong romance plotline that follows our main character Evangeline, and she is absolutely broken-hearted because the man she is in love with decides to marry somebody else, or the boy she's in love with decides to marry somebody else, and she kind of goes to the fate of broken hearts and pleads with him to make a deal so that this wedding doesn't go ahead, but she doesn't really understand the consequences of this. She is a very naive character to begin with, and she so strongly believes in happily ever after and love at first sight that like it literally doesn't occur to her that this boy she's in love with might not be the one. And so we follow her as she is now entrenched in this deal that she has made with the fate of broken hearts, and the situations that this then leads her to, and the adventure this takes her on, because she is kind of stuck holding up her end of this bargain. What I loved about this was it has a real fairy tale feel to it. The way it's written feels very reminiscent of a fairy tale. But my favorite element, which I've said a couple times in some previous videos, is this. It reminded me of if you took a Disney character, a Disney princess, and just before they were about to like get married and have their happily ever after, you had the prince turn around and be a real dick to them and decide that they didn't want them anymore, and then you followed what the princesses did. This is kind of what that feels like. We have a very naive character. She is naive, but she's not annoyingly naive. She's actually kind of just very sweet. I think she reads really well, but she was so wholeheartedly believed that she was going to get this happily ever after with this person, and then it turned out not to be true, and doesn't really know what to do with that. So she's convinced that it must all be like to do with magic and he must be cursed, and so she has to go and make a deal with the fate of broken hearts because clearly he's not doing any of this willingly. And it is so fun. The next book in this series, The Ballad of Never After, is on my TBR for March. I am so excited to continue with this series, and the escapism in this one is really good. It's such an easy world to just lose yourself in, and because it's a fairy tale vibe, I really felt like I was living this with her and existing in this world with her. And then I kind of just finished the book and had to come back to the everyday real world, and I didn't love that aspect. I didn't love having to come out of it when I finished it, but I did really enjoy this book. The only reason I didn't give this 5 stars, even though I have such a glowing review of it, is because it's told in a very fairy tale kind of way, it feels a little bit surface level, and I didn't feel like I could believe in a lot of the relationships that were forming. I would like to add that I'm not entirely sure we were supposed to, and I do feel like with the next few books that will probably change. Yeah, it felt a little bit surface level. It felt like, okay, we have this plot point, and now we have the next plot point, now we have the next plot point. It didn't feel like it had that much depth, but I still really enjoyed this and can't wait for the next one. Every time I take a book out, I have to like rearrange my special edition shelf. It is very annoying. This is like one of my favorite books of the year already. This I'm almost embarrassed by how much I loved this book, because I am aware that it is kind of cheesy and like terrible literature, objectively probably, but I had so much fun with this. It was so good. This felt so reminiscent of like Twilight fanfiction or just werewolf stories that you would find on Wattpad, like one of those, but like make it well written and published. And it had such a nostalgic quality for me that I was obsessed with. So this is a marriage of convenience where we follow our main character Misery as she is kind of married off to a werewolf. So Misery is a vampire and her father is like the leader of the vampires, and he decides to marry her off to the leader of the werewolves to try and bring peace between these two kind of species. Also very much to do with like a power thing for Misery's father. But we follow Misery and Lo as they are kind of in this forced proximity, forced marriage situation, as they have to learn how to get along whilst they're different species, and kind of learn that there's been a lot of misconceptions about each other's species and they're not as evil as each one believes. And yeah, I just loved this. It was so fun, so easy to read. I was so obsessed with Misery and Lo, and I feel like I would go and read fan fiction of this series online. Yeah, I still feel like I have a book hangover from this. I don't even know what could come close to comparing to this. Like, I feel like paranormal romance is not as much of a thing anymore. But I gave this 5 stars. I would highly recommend it. Take it with a pinch of salt, because this is a very cheesy fanfiction-y kind of nostalgic feeling for a book. But if you were a fan of reading fanfiction or werewolf stories growing up, then I think you would really enjoy this. Then, to try to deal with my book hangover from reading Bride, I figured I would stick with some fantasy romance, and I read The Ever King. This is a pirate ship-based fantasy romance novel. This gave me Little Mermaid vibes, to be honest. It doesn't follow a mermaid, but our main character is called Eric, and he is like a prince slash a king, and he spends a lot of time on a ship, and it really kind of made me feel like he was based on Eric from The Little Mermaid. But essentially Eric is a king of the kind of water fae realm, the sea fae realm, and his kingdom, his realm, has been at war with the earth fae for centuries. And in the beginning of this book we see Eric as he is just a child, and he has been held captive by Livia, who is the princess of the earth fae, her family holding him captive. And we follow Livia as she, as a child, goes to Eric and tries to befriend him, and they are just children and they don't really understand the consequences of this war. And then we skip forward to the present day, where Livia accidentally frees Eric from his captivity, where they are now both adults, and basically Eric responds by capturing Livia to get back at her family for capturing him. It's messy, it's chaotic, but it is a fun little romantic series. I will be reading the next book. I gave this 4 stars. When I was reading it, I was having a really good time. I rated it just after I read it. So clearly at the time I felt like this was a 4-star read, but now I'm thinking, was it more of a 3-star? Because I don't really remember much about this and I don't feel that excited to talk to you about it. But I do really look forward to reading the next one in this series. We ended on quite a fun little note here, and I do feel like I need the next one. So yeah, unfortunately I don't have much to say about this one, other than kind of a fae romantasy, but we have like pirate ships, a water realm versus an earth realm. And if that sounds like something you would enjoy, then I'd highly recommend giving this one a shot because it's written well, very immersive. Wish I had more to say because I feel like my enjoyment of this is not being reflected by how I'm talking about it, but I did enjoy it. I then was just on a romantasy kick, so I couldn't really, I just didn't stop with the romantasies basically at this point. Bride really set me up for, okay, I'm clearly in the mood for something, some romantasy with some weird creatures. So the next book I picked up was A Fate Inked in Blood by Danielle L. Jensen. I did vlog my experience of reading this, but I didn't show this book in the vlog because I didn't want to spoil how the book looked for people, but this edition is so stunning. I gasped when I saw it for the first time. I am obsessed with this, and I'm equally as obsessed with the book. I gave this 4 stars. This is a kind of Viking / Norse mythology romantasy series where we follow our main character Freya, and she has been used as a pawn her entire life. She was married to one man that was far older than her that didn't treat her very nicely. It's a horrible situation. Essentially this man sells her out and she is forced to battle for her life, and in this battle it is revealed that she has a drop of goddess's blood in her, which means she is kind of like a demigod type of situation in this world, and she has power. Because of this, she is then immediately married off to a different but more powerful man than her previous husband, who is also old enough to be her father and doesn't treat her very well, and only wants to be married to her because there is a prophecy surrounding Freya that she will lead someone to being king, and so this man believes that if he's married to her then he will be king. And so throughout this, Freya's second husband kind of believes that if she spends a lot of time with his son is also part of this prophecy to protect her, and he should train her, and basically she ends up spending a lot of time with her, who is essentially her stepson, but like, don't think of it that way because it's made abundantly clear that it's not quite like that. And we see how the relationship plays out between Freya and this guy who she's forced to spend a lot of time with. I think the fantasy elements of this are so interesting. I don't know how I'm going to be able to wait for the next book because I really want to see how this plays out, how the world continues to build and widen and be developed, and particularly with these prophecies and, you know, what on earth is going to happen in terms of like the whole plot. I have no idea where this is going to go, and I cannot wait for this. The reason that I gave this 4 stars, even though I really enjoyed it and felt like this could have had 5-star potential, I basically called every single plot point that was going to happen in this book from maybe the 40% mark. I didn't think that the structure of this book was particularly believable. I think anyone who has read any of the most popular romantasy series that are out there will have seen where this book was going and what was going to happen, but I wasn't necessarily mad about that. I think, you know, the tropes were done well, the structure was done well, it was written well, the characters were great, they got along really well. Love seeing the banter between them and how their relationship developed. So I'm not saying that because it was so predictable it was a bad book. I just couldn't give it 5 stars when all along, like from so early on in the book, I was like, okay, this is gonna happen, this is gonna happen, then this is gonna happen, and that's exactly how that played out. But I will say, going forward into the next few books, I think there's a lot of room for this to kind of diverge from these popular tropes and these popular trends, and I'm not entirely sure I know where this series is going. So I am really excited about this as a series. Again, how the hell am I supposed to wait so long for the next book? Can I have it now, please? But I really enjoyed Freya as a character. I felt really sorry for her in the way she was just being used by the people around her, and I loved her strength. Other than the fact that the structure of the book is quite predictable, the actual magic system and the types of characters we have and the Norse mythology element makes it one of the most original concepts for a romantasy that I've ever read, and I'm really excited to see this going forwards. And then the next book that I picked up launched me down another rabbit hole in the same way that Bride did. I read Romancing Mr. Bridgerton, which is Colin and Penelope's Bridgerton novel. I really wanted to read this before I watched the Netflix series of their romance. Also, I'm tired of waiting for it, so I was like, okay, I'll finally just pick up this book, and I'm so happy that I did. This has been my favourite Bridgerton novel so far. I can see why everyone is really excited for this series. I think it's going to be so good. Colin and Penelope have this kind of weird friends to lovers situation, and it's interesting seeing a friends to lovers take place in a Regency romance setting. My favourite part about this book is that Penelope has been pining for Colin for so long, and when it reaches a point where their relationship is developing or they're spending more time together, she really has to confront the fact that she has been putting Colin on a pedestal for so long and he is not perfect, and that by him letting her down and hurting her and her realizing that he's not perfect, that's actually a deeper kind of love and respect that you have for someone. And I thought that was so interesting to see play out in a friends to lovers such as this, where it's been kind of unrequited love on Penelope's side for so long, and actually kind of her realizing that Colin's never going to live up to this like fake Colin that she's been mentally married to for years. I don't think many authors actually explore that element, and I've never read that before, so I was so intrigued by this when I read it, and I loved it. It was so much fun. So I gave this 3 stars, but I do think this is the best of the Bridgerton series so far. It feels like it's really started to hit its stride now, and it kind of reignited my interest in reading the rest of the series. After reading Benedict and Sophie's story, that was like the worst thing I've ever read in my entire life. It was a word for word, plot point for plot point copy of Cinderella, and I can't believe that actually got published. It took me ages after reading Benedict and Sophie to want to pick this up, because I was so sure that I was just going to get so let down and it was just going to be awful. But now I've read this, I really enjoyed it, and I'm really interested to read the rest of the series, because I have no idea like what is actually supposed to happen in the rest of the series. I would be going in much more blind than for the first 4. But yeah, I'm actually interested in continuing with this series now, and this launched me into a Regency romance rabbit hole and was why I was able to read so many books this month, because I then devoured a multitude of Regency romance novels, which I will tell you about now. So the next Regency romance that I read was A Bargain with a Rake by Sadie Bosque. I gave this 3 stars, and I would actually recommend this one, but I would give you a warning that this is the 3rd book in a series, which I did not know going in, and these books do massively spoil the previous ones, so I probably can't read book 1 and 2 in this series now, because it's been so terribly spoiled for me by this book. So maybe if you're interested, I would recommend starting with book 1, but I can't tell you if those are good or not. But I can tell you that book 3 slapped. A Bargain with a Rake follows our main character, and she is a duchess in her own right. The title has been passed down to her from her family's legacy. She has no brothers, no male cousins or anything like that, like it is hers. But there is a stipulation that she can't access her money or her birthright until she is either 25 or married. People, the family who are running things while she is waiting to come of age, are doing a terrible job of it. So she goes to this Rake who has lost all of his money because he has been cut off from his family for his rakish ways, and she proposes a marriage of convenience so that she can inherit her birthright sooner, because she will be married and he will have access to her money, but he won't have to give up his rakish ways. They will live separately. He can continue sleeping around. She just wants to be able to be a duchess and be able to do her thing. And so we follow these two as they are running away to elope, as they get caught in a multitude of situations where her family are trying to stop them from getting married, and as they start to confront that there are feelings there, and it's not going to be as simple as they thought it would be. And also because it's a marriage of convenience, and she's been saying all along that she wants to live separately, and he has been like sleeping around for so long. How do they get over these things to communicate with each other that actually they do want a life together and they are falling in love with each other? You know, like, it's one of my favorite elements of any fake dating or marriage of convenience, that I'm starting to fall, but they've said all along that it's not that. So like, how do we communicate? How do I confess? I love that element, and this one did it so well. So I also gave this one 3 stars, and I would really recommend this. And then I read the next book in this series, which is An Offer from a Marquez, and I also gave this one 3 stars and would also recommend this one. Again, this one did spoil everything that happened in the previous book, so I would recommend going in order with this series. But we follow our main character, Isabel, and she has spent a decent amount of time unmarried. And we follow as she meets the Marquess of Vane, and he is a hermit basically. He has been living alone, just trying to raise his daughter for a really long time, but he has realized that he needs a wife. He needs someone who can educate his daughter and be around to kind of bring her out into society. And he just realizes that it's not going to work doing it all on his own anymore, and there's things that he cannot teach a young lady. So he goes looking for a wife, and he thinks that Isabel is unprepared in every sense of the word for what he's looking for, but they accidentally get caught in a compromising position. So Isabel is running away from someone, she accidentally runs into him, and they fall over, and then people walk out and they think that stuff's been going on that hasn't been going on. So these two end up kind of having to get married if they want to, like if Isabel wants to save her reputation. And we follow Isabel, she is having to kind of navigate a husband who really doesn't think she's cut out to be his wife, and who doesn't think she's cut out to be a lady of the house, and who doesn't think she's cut out to be a mother to his daughter, a daughter who is not very happy at having a new mother and having all of this change going on in her life, and a household that doesn't respect her or think she's cut out for this. And we follow her navigating the situation and actually really like standing up to her husband and proving that she does have what it takes and that he's completely misunderstood everything about her. And there's so many elements like to both of these Sadie Bosk books. There were a lot more elements to these relationships than I'm giving you because I don't want to spoil too much about these books, but they're all really complex and well thought out situations and dynamics, and I think like this one as well works just as well. To me, what makes a really good romance writer is someone who can come up with a character and have this really complex character and then sits there and who thinks, okay, what would complement this character? What does this person need in a partner? And is then able to really create a character in a relationship where two people can complement each other nicely and bring out the best in each other. And I don't think that's always done. I think authors will sometimes just write two separate characters and try to force them together, but I think it works really well when you can actually see how the other person has something that they need. And I think this is something that Sadie Bosk has done quite well in this series, at least in the two that I have read, and is why I would recommend these. If you are a fan of Regency romances and you would like some more, these are on KU, so they're free or just really cheap if you don't have KU, and they're honestly, they're good fun. And now onto the penultimate book of this month. Thank you guys for bearing with me for so long. I know I've read a lot this month. But the next book I read was Always Only You by Chloe Leese. If you guys have seen my most recent vlog, then you will have seen me reading this one. I gave this 2 stars. Look, credit where credit is due. This is one of the most diverse romance novels I have ever read, and I think the representation in this book was incredible. We have a main character with autism who also has a chronic illness, and I do think the representation is really good. But I couldn't vibe with this because this is a very character-driven novel, which is not a problem in and of itself. But I felt like these characters were incredibly two-dimensional, and so it was really boring to get through this, and I didn't see them as real people. I didn't believe in their relationship as a result of that, and so it was just really difficult to kind of navigate. I especially read like the main male character is so flat and two-dimensional. He essentially meets Frankie and then never ever ever looks at another girl, sleeps with another girl, goes on a date with another girl for years, whilst Frankie is just some random girl that he works with because he's attracted to her, and then it like just so happens to work out that these two like get together. But like I don't find that to be realistic, and it didn't make him feel like a real person and a real man. Like I don't know, it was a bit of a struggle. Like I didn't think it was particularly sexy that he saw her one time and then was like, cool, I'm never ever ever interacting with the female species ever again until I'm with this woman. Like to me that was actually kind of creepy, and so I just kind of started this off on a bad note, I guess, and it didn't really get any better from there. There was nothing about this that could bring it back for me. I gave this 2 stars. But then I ended the month on such a high because I found like a new favorite romance novel, and that is Fang Go Down by Tessa Bailey. This is the copy that I read. One of the girls that I work with was selling her Afterlife edition, and I bought that from her because I just loved it that much. So now I have 2 copies and I'm totally okay with that. This is a Tessa Bailey contemporary sports romance, and it is about golf. Now I am a little bit biased because I have started to play golf recently and I have fallen down a little bit of a golf rabbit hole, so I'm a little bit biased. Even taking the golf element out of this is a fantastic example of a sports romance, and a lot of people should read this to see how it's done, if I'm being honest with you. The sports romance actually played a pivotal role in this book. He wasn't just a person who played golf and then they had a normal romance outside of that. Like the sports aspect was actually an integral part of this book, and you could not have had this book without it being a sports romance, and that is what we like to see. We follow our main character Wells, and he is a down on his luck golfer who is so in his head and is dealing with so much baggage that every time he kind of does badly at golf, he just ends up in a spiral and he keeps getting worse and worse. And as a result of this, he quits, and in his frustration he takes that frustration out on his biggest fan, Josephine, who has been there to support him at pretty much every game. She's there with her signs, there like to support him, and he just goes off at her. Like, he is in a downward spiral, he's deciding to quit the PGA Tour, and she's there trying to cheer him up and get him to continue, and he absolutely snaps at her. And then circumstances arrive throughout this book, and he ends up feeling really, really guilty about how he's treated her. So he goes to her and he proposes that he will go back to the PGA Tour if she will caddy for him and help him get back to a position of winning, and if she is his caddy, then she will receive a cut of everything that he wins, and so it'll be a good situation for her while she is also dealing with some stuff that she's got going on. So they're forced to spend a lot of time together. Wells is forced to trust somebody else. He is forced to trust her judgment about golf, so that she can, you know, since she is his caddy, she is employed by him, he is employing her to help him win. And the fact that he is forced to trust her in that situation ends up like having a knock-on effect to their relationship outside of work. And as I said, like, you cannot have this book without the element of him being a golfer and playing golf. And that was so much fun to read in a sports romance, because sometimes it feels like sports romances nowadays, like, it doesn't really matter if the guy's an athlete or not, because all of the novel takes place in a way where you could remove the sport and it wouldn't matter. So I loved Josephine. This is a Grumpy Sunshine sports romance. I don't love Grumpy Sunshine, I also don't hate it, but I think sometimes Sunshine characters can be so naive and irritating, but that was so not the case with Josephine. She is a sunshine character, but she also struggles with type 1 diabetes, and she, as a result, is a very like mature and pragmatic person, and there was absolutely no way where you could read this and think, okay, she's sunshine but she's naive. Like, she's just happy, and that is fine. And she is also a total fangirl for Wells, and we see her having to kind of navigate this change in relationship to, okay, he is like, I've put him on a pedestal because I am a fangirl for him, to, okay, we work together now, he's a real person, stuff's happening, but it's happening in a different way to when I just loved the idea of him because I was a fangirl. And I loved that element in a similar way to the way I loved it in Colin and Penelope's Bridgerton book. And I also loved it because I am a fangirl to my core, and this was a nice little nostalgic throwback to like fan fiction about a fan marrying the person that they're a fangirl for. And yeah, absolutely adored this book, if you couldn't tell by the fact that I went and purchased a special edition of somebody, so now I have 2 copies. And yeah, I could not recommend this enough. If you like sports romances, then I recommend it, and if you like Tessa Bailey books, then I recommend it, because it was perfect. So here are all of the books, well, so a lot of the books I read were ebooks, but here are all of the physical books that I read in the month of February. I cannot believe how much I managed to read in such a short space of time, and you know, hopefully we continue this energy going into March. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there was a mix of ratings here, but I would say overall I look at the month quite positively. I think I found some real favourites in the month of February, and books that I will talk about even when the year is over and months have passed. So all in all, I would say February was a great month. Do let me know down in the comment section if you read any of these, if you're thinking about reading any of these, if I have motivated you to go and pick any of them up. I would love to have a conversation about some of these books with you guys down in the comment section. Also, if you enjoyed this, do please feel free to hit that big red subscribe button down below and stay tuned for future content. There are videos on my channel every single Wednesday and every single Sunday, so there is no shortage of bookish content here for you to enjoy. And because I have been rambling for so long about these books, I'm just gonna end out this video. I hope you guys are having a fantastic week, you're enjoying everything you are reading, and there are no reading slumps in your future, and I will see you for my next video. Bye guys.